Hiya guys, welcome along. Nigel here with you, Nigel's Modelling Bench, and this video is part 16 of the Big Bad Buff build for beginners. So here we're looking at the wing assemblies and the engine assemblies on the Monogram Revell, whatever you want to call it, B52D, which is basically this one here. You can see there's three of them there. There's two Monogram boxings and the original Monogram boxing with the bits in there with the motor to make the jet engine noises. I've never heard it. I don't want to get into that kit. I don't want to take the parts off the sprue. That's a real special kit to be, that one. So in case you don't know, that is the original boxing, 1968. Look back in my videos 18 months, 2 years ago, I did a review of that kit, and it's quite incredible because, bearing in mind, it's a 1968, did I just say 58? It's a 1968 kit. And in there's a slip of paper that tells you all about the bomber, and it starts off with something like, this aging bomber is still as good today as it ever was, you know. And it's like, that was 52 years ago. So, you know, crazy to think. And they're still going, and they're going to be going for another 30 or 40 years, aren't they? So amazing. Sorry, not 30 or 40 years, 20 or 30 years. And up here we've got our Model Collect B52s there. This is the H, kindly bought for me by Barry. Thank you very much, Barry. And then we've got the old G there with the B28s in it, and we've got the original Old Crow Express. I remembered, wow, Old Crow Express one there. So basically this is that kit, well, one of those kits there that we're building. So let's get the camera down to the bench and get on with what we're doing. See you in a minute. Right then, so here we are at the bench, and if you remember, at the end of part 15 we'd painted Mr. Surfacer around all our pylons, top and bottom, and I've gone and put another couple of drops in to fill in the gaps where it has sunk back. And as you can see here, it's quite thick, and it's not really quite dry yet because this is only about 3 hours after I filmed the part 15. But it's best not to leave it on too long, so I'm going to have to get this video out pretty soon after 15 for you. But it's best not to leave it on too long. The harder it gets, the harder it is to get off. Or the longer it's left on there, the harder it is to get off. Now, as I said, we're not going to do any sanding at this point. We're not going to do any sanding. We're going to use cotton bud and thinners to get it off. And I'm going to use Mr. Colour levelling thinner. Now, Ron Calvary, who has the Model Ship channel, he is actually... I've actually told him this stuff is awesome. This thinner, he uses this X20A for thinning Tamiya paints. And if you watch his channel, and he admits it, I'm not putting him down, I'm not talking behind his back, the paint often has a very grainy finish and you can easily just rub it off and stuff. That's because this stuff isn't very, what we call, hot. This is an acrylic thinners. It's still harmful for you to breathe in. It's flammable. You know, it's the same as this stuff. Same codes, flammable, and it's got this question mark here, or sorry, exclamation mark there, which means it's harmful. This is the old system. This is the new system. If you want to look it up, look up your health and safety stuff. But basically, this just means hazardous, and it will cover many things like. That they can't put on here, so it'll tell you to check it out, but it'll be stuff like harmful to the unborn child, harmful to the respiratory system, harmful to eyes, it could have side effects of a bloody nose or whatever, you know. This symbol here, this exclamation mark, is kind of generic for a lot of stuff now worldwide, so it covers a lot of stuff. This is the old sort of hazard, so you can see that there it's got the old one under there. Now this is a 100% organic solvent. Okay, this is a alcohol mixture, it says. As I say, they're both harmful. Having said that, this one is probably worse. But when we say that, I'm talking about the difference of jumping into a diesel fueled fire or jumping into a petrol fueled fire. They're both dangerous. They're both not good for you. And if you abuse them, they're both going to kill you. So basically, you know, unless you're just going to use water with your paints, then you best just not bother modelling. This stuff, however, is awesome. If you wear a mask and use an extractor, this stuff is absolutely amazing. And I've often used it neat. Now, I saw the other day on the Flory Models channel, somebody asked a question about how you prevent the graininess when you're spraying into like if you're spraying into this pylon and you come in with the airbrush like this, you know, you're likely to get a dusty effect, particularly on a very hot day. What I tend to do, if this is my airbrush, if you spray it like this, it tends to avoid that, because what's happening is the paint is going in and then it's bouncing off the surface and blowing up onto there, and it's drying and sticking on. I've just had the experience the same on my Land Rover with the QDR paint I've been using, because it dries so fast. So if you keep the airbrush like this, the paint goes in and bounces off that way, so it tends not to do that. But if you do get that, what you can do is airbrush this stuff neat over the top, and it just melts it in. Even if you've used Tamiya thinners, if you spray this stuff neat over the top, whatever you've used, it will blend it in. The other beauty of this stuff is you can pretty much thin anything with it. You can use it for your primers. Stynal Res, you can use it for that. You can use it obviously for thinning Tamiya. You can use it for thinning obviously AK real colours. You got your Tamiya lacquer paints, you can thin that with it. You can thin some 2-pack paints with it. I'm not sure about Viejo. Somebody told me you can thin Viejo primer with it. I haven't tried that because I think Viejo primer is not very good. And you can do all sorts with it. But one of its best tricks is what I'm going to show you now. And what we're going to do is use a cotton bud, okay? And we're going to remove all the excess Mr. Surfacer around here. And it's going to enable us to seal that join, seal that seam, but not remove any detail. So you can imagine if we went in and started sanding it, we would remove all this raised detail. And it's the same with recessed detail. You start sanding and get, you get rid of your rivet detail and all that, and it's a nightmare to replicate. So basically you could use this one, but this one works much better because it works much faster. So I'm just going to basically dip my cotton bud into there. Okay, I'm going to put the lid on in case I knock it over, and I'm just going to go on here and I'm going to wet both sides. Okay, in fact you can come over here and wet this one as well. And then what it does, while it sits there, it'll attack it slightly, and then you can just rub over the top, and as you can see the excess is just coming off on the cotton bud, and then you can swap sides and just dry it up like that. Job done. Okay, it's as simple as that. So wipe it over the top, swap sides, come over. Now you will see some people will tell you you can do this with cellulose thinners. I thoroughly recommend you don't, particularly if you're a beginner, because you will find the cellulose thinners will attack the plastic, and you need to be careful with some Bandai kits because they don't like some solvents on them either. So basically you can see there what we've got is a seamless joint without doing any sanding. Now again on this one you can see in here, you can see in there, I could just rub the cotton bud on there, okay, and it removes all the excess from the area. And this is why I wasn't being careful about how I applied it, because it doesn't matter. Alright, the other thing, one thing you can't do with this is if you've used acrylic paints, obviously if you do this after you've painted, you'll take all your paint off. So if you're repairing a seam like on a fuselage spine after you've painted it, then you need to be a little bit careful. Obviously if you've used Mr. Surfacer as a primer, then it will remove the surrounding area, but then you can just feather it back with some fine sandpaper or fine wet and dry or whatever, or a fine sanding stick or sponge, and then you can just paint over it again. But for this is on the bare plastic, and as you can see it's drying out a bit now, so it's starting to not work so well. The swap ends, see if I can pick up the excess like that, and there we go, that is done. Now you can see it hasn't quite got in there because it's dried up. Throw the cotton bud away. Don't ever put the dirty cotton bud back in your leveling thinners, or keep yourself a jar like this. I've got some leveling thinners in there which I can use, so it doesn't matter if it gets dirty. But you do not want to be getting Mr. Surfacer in your fresh bottle of Mr. Colour leveling thinners. That's not good. Now on the other wing I'll show you, you can do this with Tamiya thinners, but it just takes a lot longer. Although it may not take a lot longer actually saying that, because this Mr. Surfacer is still quite soft, so it may not be much of a difference. But if you've had it on there for sort of 3 or 4 days, I would seriously suggest using Mr. Colour leveling thinners. So that's those undersides done, and you can see we've got a seamless joint. Okay, we've got a small hole there, a small air hole. So sometimes you can rub over that and get rid of it by basically putting some more in there, but I don't think we're going to get away with that. So we're going to have to go in there. So we've got a pinhole there, you can see, and I think I have one on this. Yeah, there's a tiny pinhole there to deal with. So that's fine. So throw the cotton bud away. We'll get some Tamiya thinners now onto here. Notice also I've got my old cutting mat down, because if you get any of this on your cutting mat, it will remove the lettering and stuff. So I'm going to put this on there. I'm going to wet both sides. And one other piece of advice, guys, with these bottles, it's always handy to keep them for stuff, but for example, don't start using this to put cellulose thinners in, because one day you'll pick it up and thinking it's Tamiya X20 and it isn't. So you can see it does work, but watch. See how long it's taking to come off? Look at that, it's really taking a lot of work to get that off of there. Okay, so you can use it, but it's much more rubbing. And when you do much more rubbing, you're pushing it all about, you're likely to get holes and stuff like that. So you're much better off with your Mr. Colour leveling thinners. Let's just come in, get your end of your bud wet, buddy. Just put that on there, put some on there, put some on there, put some on there. Right, and then you can see that is working straight away. It's spreading it all about. There's loads on here. I'm just going to swap ends because I want to soak up some of this mess. And you can also use, there's another product you can use, is the AK high compatibility thinner. It's very similar to the Mr. Colour leveling thinners, but you may as well just buy the Mr. Colour leveling thinners because it's one size fits all. And as I say, if you're watching this, Ron, you know, I know you said that somebody was concerned that you were going to start using lacquers. I don't know if it's a lacquer or not, but all I do know is it's bloody good stuff. And you'll stop getting your graininess, and your paint will stick to the plastic much better. Get rid of that cotton bud, get another one. As you can see, you get through some cotton buds, but cotton buds are cheaper than sanding sticks. There we go. So you can see that's really working on that now, really taking it back. Now what's going to happen with this one, when it dries it will shrink back, so we're going to have to put another application on after it's dry. There's no point in doing it now because it'll just shrink back because it's all wet with thinners. But we'll put another application on, only on this one, because you can see it's going to shrink back here where those big gaps are, but the others are all going to be fine. And I've been checking my references and stuff, and it looks as though the pylons will be black, the bottoms of the engines will be black, but the areas on the top are going to be painted to match with the camouflage on the wings. So we're going to have to look at how we're going to do that, and we're going to be using a primer first. So what I'm tempted to do is spray the whole thing black. Once all this is done, we've got the spoilers in and everything, I'm going to be fitting my spoilers in the closed position. So I'm going to fit them, well, we're doing that in a minute. We're going to fit them, and we're going to try and somehow blend them in, make them fit nice or whatever, make them look less toy-like, because they're designed to be openable, but they really are, they're a weak point of the kit. Let's just put it like that to be polite. At least they're in the correct place, which is more than can be said for the Model Collect ones. And there we go. Job done. And now just wipe that side off again. Just get it going. And then use the other end of the cotton bud just to clean up. And these little areas where you can see the residue, I mean, you can go on there and fuss about with trying to clean it all up if you want to, but that residue is so thin it won't show up under any paint or anything. There's something on there, so we'll get rid of that. Okay, so there you go. You can see that one, perfect joint all the way around, nothing to worry about. This one's going to sink back here, so we're going to deal with that afterwards. So on the tops we can do the same. So get rid of a cotton bud. And I have looked at references and it looks like these great big bulging lumps should be here. So I'm just going to go around there with that one, get that one wet, get that one wet. This one's got a lot of excess in it. There we go. So we can get all that out. Out of all of these, that is the worst fitting engine, I think. Oh no, because it's this one, isn't it? This one's, yeah, sorry, I thought it was the outboard that had the bad fitting underside, but it's this one. Number 2, which should have an exhaust port for the APU. On here, the number 2 pylon should have a circular port in it, I believe. I know the G does. Don't think the H does. It's funny when you start looking at references and you start to notice stuff and you read stuff and everything. There we go. So that's that one cleaned up. Just get some of that off of there. Just rub that away. Same here. And then we can there we go. And as I say, can you imagine doing this with the finished model? The size of it is huge. So this is, I think this was a good plan, doing it this way around. I'll get some more on there. Another cotton bud, so you can see you get it all over your hands from the back end of the cotton bud. And invariably what happens with these modern day cotton buds, they've got paper stems now, so we're not putting all this plastic in the ocean, which is a fantastic thing. The downside to it is, of course, they've got these paper stems, so when you get them wet they tend to get soggy and start to just bend about very quickly, so you're generally getting through a lot anyway, even if you're not, even if you're not using them a lot in one session, I mean. Because if I put that down now, when I pick it up again, it would just be useless because the end would be all floppy. But they weren't made with the idea of doing this. There we go. So that's those done. Again, this is going to need some more. That's going to sink down in there. So we'll let that dry and then we'll put some more in. But basically, you can see that they're sinking back already. So let's come along and do the tops of these. And I think I'll do this off camera because you're probably getting bored by now and I don't you've fallen asleep on me. Wake up! Right, there we go. That's both of them done. So as you can see, it's very easy to get a very nice job. Got a small pinhole in there and a small pinhole there. So But other than that, you can see we've actually managed to fill all around these engines without taking away any detail whatsoever. So, and it's only good where you've got stuff like this, where you've got this panel going into the wing. You could do the same here on the tanks. I don't know how good the fit is. Let's have a look. I've got my now bag of parts here because the box has been commandeered by another kit. So, is that the right one? Yes, it is. But no, it's not. So I'm not sure how good a fit these are on here. They're probably very nice indeed, actually. Yeah, very nice indeed. Now, we can see straight away we have got an issue, and I'm glad I've done this because we're going to sort this issue out. These tabs are .3, 1.25. So 1.25, they're 1.25 wide, and these slots are 1.9, 2 millimeters wide. So I'm going to glue some plastic card in these, or I can glue some plastic card on there to thicken them up so that when it goes in it all spreads out and pulls it together, because basically what we've got here when we fit these, we've got a huge gap down the sides. So we want to get rid of that gap. Okay, so the only way to get rid of that gap is to make those slots narrower, and we'll probably have the same issue when it comes to this one. Yep, it's even worse, this one. So these slots here are, that's 2.3, that's 2.2, 2.4 did I see then? No. And these are 1.4, 1.3. So we've got some work to do here, guys. So I'm either going to fatten these up or I'm going to fatten them up. We'll see. But I'm going to add some plastic card, and I'm going to show you how to do that just to make them absolutely fit in there positively, so we don't end up with these huge gaps to have to fill, because I don't really want to fit these before I paint the wings, really. Or maybe I can, I'm not sure, I'll have to check. In fact, let's have a look now when we come to do the camouflage. Well, we could be okay because it's only the areas that are outside. So we might add them and then spray those afterwards. We might add these before we add them to the vehicle. The fuselage as well. So I'll keep my calipers here, and then I'll show you how we do this gap filling exercise. I've got that one there and that one there. So, and I've got my box of scrap plastic card here. So let me get myself together and I'll show you where we're going with this. Right, so these slots are average 2 millimeters wide. These tabs are average 1.3. So I need to get some plastic card. Look at that. That's a little bit thick, I think. I'm not sure that'll go in. Oops, we can try it. You can hold it like this, try and push that into the gap. Yeah, it's trying to go in, but it's a little bit thick. So let's see what I can find in here. What's this? That's 0.77. That might be okay, actually. So what I'm going to do is take a pencil and mark a line on here for how long it is. Okay, and then mark a line on here for how long that one is, and then take a rule and draw a line there and a line up there, and then we can just cut one off that wide, and we'll cut one off that wide. So get my knife, make 2 cuts, same again here, and then I can just come down here and whoops, cut that one off there. So you can snap that one off because I've made 2 cuts in it. Snap that one off, and then I'm going to cut that one off there on that line, and cut that one off there, and they should fit in those slots. Okay, if they don't, we can just make them fit. So I'm going to grab a pair of tweezers because I'm likely to drop this because I should have cut it thicker. Okay, so that's not quite going in, so what I'm going to do is cut the end on a slight angle, just to shorten it. And now that will fit in there beautifully. Okay, so we've got two choices. We can either glue these into here, or we can glue them on the inside of here. Alright, now if we glue them on the inside of here, and I glue them on the inside so it pushes the tank out so we don't get a gap. Glue them on the inside of here, it's a lot easier to sand. Okay, and we're going to want to put a bit of a wedge on there anyway. So I'm going to take a coarse sanding stick and sand. What did I say earlier about in the last part about having a nice long piece to deal with rather than dealing with silly little parts? So put that in like that. Grab our extra thin, which is here. So I can hold that in place with tweezers, just like that. And then put the extra thin in there, and that'll capillary down in, and that'll be dry within a couple of minutes. So we can hold that like that. Oops, chucking the tweezers all over the place. This is not a good idea. I shouldn't be showing you to do that. Don't be using glue over your model parts if you can avoid it. That's the time it'll drip off the brush. It'll never drip off onto your bench or into anything else, but I guarantee it'll drip off onto your model. Okay, and I've managed to get glue marks on the outside there because I'm an idiot. And then this one, grab our tweezers. And that one doesn't fit in there either, so well done, Nigel, you've done a great job. So we'll just cut this on an angle, like so. Check that it's going to go in. Yes, it does. So we can come along, we can place that on there, other way up. Oh. What I'll do is I'll put some glue on here first to help me. And then we can place that on there, like so. And then just nudge it down in. Nudge it back a bit. Plenty of glue. Okay, and then leave that to dry. Okay, so I've done that now. I've put some plastic card in here. You can see I've also put a little spacer in there to push them apart. And I've also had to put a piece of plastic card on here. You can see on this one, it fits okay. Okay, so you've got no gap. But when you actually looked at this one, there was a bigger hole there. So I think it might have been a short shot. So I had to fill that in. So basically, when that's dry, what I'll do is I'll just hold that in position like that. In fact, I can do it now. If I can find my pencil, I'll draw a pencil line across there. Okay, like so. And then I can come along with the knife and just slice down through there, like so. Remove that part of the plastic card, and then that should fit on there perfectly. Obviously this will have to be sanded in and blended in and everything, but it should fit down nice with the, yeah, there you go. That'll fit now nice with the trailing edge, like so. So like that. And now you can see we can get these to go in, and we don't have a gap around the sides because they're spread apart and they've got those packers in there to hold them out. And you can see that this one here is the same. Got the packers in there, got it spread out, and that'll just slot in there like that and fit beautifully. So there we go. So that's that done. So I don't know whether to glue these on right away. I think what I'll do is deal with the back ends first to make sure they match, and then I think we'll go on and glue these in. I'm tempted to kind of paint this area in here black first, because when you get this on like that, it's going to be quite difficult to get the paint in there. Okay, so I'll have to see where we're going. And I'm also thinking I might paint these bays first and then mask them off before we do the black, rather than mask the black off and then paint the bays. So we shall see. But I think we'll be doing that in this part of the video. So let's get some more. I'm going to put some more Mr. Surfacer stain in there on its own, look. So get some Mr. Surfacer in there. I'll also get some in these tiny little pinholes, and then we'll come back and have another look. I've sanded away now on this back part here and blended that in with the rest of the pod, or the rest of the tank should I say. So now that will fit on the wing like so, no gaps around the sides, and on the back edge it's blended in perfectly just like the other side. So happy with that. So we're going to get this glued on now. Now basically it's fitting absolutely beautifully, but I have noticed that these corners are actually holding it away a touch. So all I'm going to do is come in with a knife and just basically sharpen up those corners, because they seem to like have a radius in them. It's probably some tool wear, just sort of, you know, the steel tool has probably worn away slightly on the corner or whatever. Maybe it's always been like that, but basically that should now go in a lot sweeter rather than being held away like it is there. So yeah, we have got a tiny gap. You can see we have got a small gap in there, and something is holding it away, and I don't know what it is. Okay, I can see it now. You can see we've got a different profile on the wing to the tank. So it might be an idea, if you are building this kit, glue the tank to the wing before the lower wing, before you actually glue the wing halves together. So just remove some plastic from the front there, just to try and improve the angle. And there we go, you can see straight away we've got a slightly better joint. It's not a million times better, but I'm just going to take away, I'm just sanding this to kind of straighten it out and make it sort of flatter rather than having too big of a curve. It was kind of more suited to the Model Collect wing really, because those wings I think have too much. There we go. Now on the back end of it, I don't think there's much we can do really, because it fits perfectly on this side and not on that side, and if I start messing with it I'm going to end up with a tilt on it. So basically with it sat in there like that, you can see that fit is nigh on perfect. We can just come in with some extra thin and just brush that in there, put plenty in there, make sure it's held down. Okay, I don't want to be squeezing it or anything, I don't want glue oozing out. And what I said earlier about painting it, I don't think it's going to be a problem. We're going to be basically giving it an overall black primer from an aerosol can. I think I mentioned that before. There we go, that's going down lovely. So we're going to give it a black primer for an aerosol can, and we're going to then work on not so much weathering but giving it some painted effects to make it look like a model rather than just a toy. If you just paint it black, it'll just look black, and you may be happy with that, you may think that's fine. I want to try and give it some life, so I'm going to be going in with some very dark greys, maybe some extremely dark blue, and then also, you know, using some light coloured washes to try and, you know, show some stains or whatever, and just try my best really. Unfortunately with being raised panel lines it won't be easy to do the panel work, but we'll get there, and I might even do some special paint effects and show you that, where you basically mask, you basically put a piece of masking tape on the panel line, airbrush lightly, paste on the mask on the panel line, airbrush lightly, and it makes the panel line stand out. Okay, so there we go. Now the fit on the outside, as you can see, is perfect. The fit on the inside, we've got a bit of a gap at the back there, and I don't think it's my piece of plastic card that's holding it out. I think it's just basically the shape of the tank, and we've got that crack joint on the bottom there which is repaired from the inside. But just to make sure, I'm just going to run some extra thin over there, and then that can penetrate if there is a problem, and then we can just sand that out. Put some more on, let it get in there. There we go. So that's that one on. So So I'll place that to one side to dry. And then this one here, we've got the same issue again. Yeah, we've got the same issue again with the actual profile of the wing. So I'm just going to remove, this one's not as bad. Just remove some plastic from there, just so it's not being held away. There we go, the fit there is nice. The fit on the outside is nice, but again, I've got these corners. I'm just going to remove some plastic from there, just to allow it to sit in a bit tighter. There we go. Just like that. Let's see how it fits now. And I hope you guys, if you are beginners, if you're new to the hobby, I hope you're getting a lot from this, because it's the little bits and pieces like that that many channels don't show you. Okay, so something is holding it away, and I can't see what it is. I'm wondering if it's the inside of this slot that's holding it away. Let's just carve some plastic away from there. Very strange. Make sure there's nothing there or there. This is extremely weird. It's kind of finding itself sitting up. Now I've also noticed when I look at this one, you can see the leading edge of the pylon is back from the leading edge of the wing. When you look at this one, we can see it's very, very far forward. So I am going to remove some material from here to allow this tank to go back, because there's obviously an error in the design there. Right, so let's try that and push it back. It still wants to go back a bit further. You can also see on the back edge you've got this is tucked right under, whereas on the other one it's kind of up flush with it. So I'm going to remove some more. And then here, remove some more. It's the clock telling us it's 10 PM. That's a bit better. So how does that compare to that one now? Still wants to go back some more. And now we're getting to this problem at the back, you see, where we've got the gap. So I'm going to have to do the same repair on this one, but I do want it to look a little bit more authentic. So that's the way the kit would have you put it. That's how I want to put it. Now I'm going to check my references and make sure that the other one isn't wrong, and I'm making this one wrong as well. Right, I've just checked my references and it looks like this is about correct, having it just back from the leading edge. So this one is in fact a little too far back. So I'm going to pull it off, okay, and leave it. Let that be dry, and then we can sand this down. And basically what I'm going to do is remove material from here, from this pylon, so that I can bring this one forward. So I'm glad I did this together rather than let this go hard and then discover I'd made a mistake. The thing is, if you do that, all you've got to do is go around some more extra thin. I'm going to have to do this. Oh no, so I'll probably get forward. That's all right. I thought I was going to have to do that again. Go around with extra thin and it will melt the joint. You just be able to just work it and pry the part away. So that's pretty cool. So we get that back like that, and you can see that what we've got now is a gap here. So I am going to basically cut that piece of plastic away there. And then what I'll be able to do is put a piece of scrap in there. So I'm going to grab my box of scrap plastic. You could use a piece of sprue, sand it to shape, whatever. You can use whatever you like, as long as you can glue it in there. And if you're in a rush to get things done, you can super glue it in there and then you'll be able to sand it pretty much straight away. So we've got some plastic here. That's not wide enough. What I'm looking for is a chunk of thick stuff. Here we go. Here's a chunk of thick stuff. So I can sand that down. In fact, that's two bits there glued together. So I'll separate that away like that. So now this is going to slot into there. So I'll just sand the sides to make it fit. There we go, that fits in there lovely. So I'll do is push that back in there. Oops, drop it inside the tank. And what I'm going to do is cut it off a bit shorter. So that'll wedge in there. So what I'll do is I'll put some extra thin in there. I'll use the quick setting. I'll just hold it while I position it. There we go. And then push that down in. And this isn't so tight as having a wedging action, it's just tight enough to keep itself in place. Okay, and then soak it in some extra thin. I'm using the quick setting for speed. And then just push it up. It's gone down a bit on one side, so I'm just going to pull it up on one side. There we go. And then that will be sanded and fitted beautifully, and it's gone down in. So I'm going to grab my tweezers, grab hold of it and pull it up. God, this quick setting is so fast. It's practically gone off. Just leave it slightly proud, and then we can sand it to suit. And I'll use some ordinary. I'm not going to bother with the quick setting anymore. And there we go. So that is basically in there, ready to be sanded down once it's dry, which I think is going to be for tomorrow morning now. Well, this is the next day now, and I've done a bit of off camera purely because I didn't want to bore you with the same old thing over and over again. So put some more Mr. Surfacer in around these pylons, done the trick with the cotton bud, done some around these here, so they're all fitting in lovely. I've just noticed I've got to get some more Mr. Surfacer off of there. In fact, I will do that right away rather than leave it and forget it, because I am going to be doing a primer check. A primer check is where you just literally go in with a small amount of primer just to go over a seam or a join, and it will just show you what you've got. So just remove that, and you can see here this is like 24, not 24 hours, 18 hours after this was put on, and you can see it's a little bit harder to remove. So there we go. Right, the next thing I want to talk about is these things. These are the spoilers, and these enable the aircraft to turn. Now A, B, C, D, E and F versions all had ailerons, and these are the ailerons here. You've got these little trim tabs on the back, but this main whole panel here is an aileron. So the G and H versions don't have that. They just use the spoilers, and the spoilers are actually split into separate panels and they can be used individually, and as the speed goes up they use less number of spoilers. Also you'll notice on the G and H models, these tangs on the back, instead of being perpendicular to the actual spoilers themselves, they're actually perpendicular to airflow, so they sort of splay out at an angle. So there's the difference. And also somebody commented that these here, these vortex generators, are in the wrong position and should be up here. I've said before, on the G and H versions they are up here. There's also a small row here on some, and I've noticed some don't have them, so I need to do some more research on that. But these vortex generators on later B52s are up here. Let me just grab a book and show you something. Right, so this is the B52 Stratofortress in action number 130. This is from Squadron Signal. We can clearly see here on page 16 there is a B52D. It says here B52D flying close formation, and you can see there clearly on the wing those vortex generators are back and outboard, okay, from where they are on a G. And you can see here clearly, you can see there that line of, point it to you, you can clearly see that line of vortex generators there on the wing. They're back just as they are on this kit, okay. They're not up here, they're down here, right? And then if we go to page 37, there's a picture here of a B52G, and you can see there clearly those vortex generators. See the line of them there? They are clearly up on the top of the wing where they would appear on an H. Okay, so if I can find another picture here of a G or an H where you can clearly see them. Sod's Law states I won't be able to find one. You can't see them on that one very well. And here we can clearly see the spoilers, like I was telling you. If you look at the spoilers on the D, when they're open, that's what you see, and they're just straight. And on the later ones, they have they're not only staggered, but the tangs on the back are in the flow of the air, so they're not actually brought back. We can see here another picture there. You can see vortex generators there. Where are we? Vortex generators there along the upper sort of third chord. Yeah. So that should be B52G and H. And then when we look over here, B52D, drawing, painting, whatever, vortex generators up on the upper part of the wing, same as they've got on that H. Okay, that's a drawing, it's a painting. Stupid artist made a mistake, hey? Nope. Look at this. This is brilliant book. B52 Aging Bus Youthful Crews. René J. Francilian and Peter B. Lewis. Absolutely brilliant book. Some fantastic images. Here we can see by the end of the fall 1982, only three wings still had the D. Yep, B52D. Last operational B52 retired in 1983. That's a B52D. Yep, we agree. The nose, the engines, the camouflage, everything, tool tail, that is a B52D. Look where the vortex generators are. They're up on the top of the wing. So, I don't know what's going on here. And this is one of the biggest problems with this aircraft. There's a very clear picture there showing the position of the vortex generators up on the upper section of the wing there, rather than back here like they are on a D. And you can also see, interestingly, we've got grey engine cowls on the front of the engines, and then here's one just in zinc chromate. And I believe if we turn the page, yeah, you've got another one here. You've got all the mismatched engine cowlings and parts because they mismatched them, or mishmashed them, should I say. So that could make your model really interesting. And also just look at the weathering you can do on the tail. Absolutely stunning. So yeah, interesting. So the person that said to me these vortex generators in the wrong place, they were correct, but they weren't. So God only knows. Maybe someone who's a B52 expert can tell me, but I've just shown you there are photographs, absolute photograph evidence proof, not drawings, not paintings, and they show B52Ds with them down here and up there. Whether it was a later mod, I don't know. Maybe in sort of 1970 or something they decided to put them all up here where the G and the H has them because it's more effective. I don't know, but anyway, so that's a little interesting lesson for us all, and it just shows if you start to do your research, then things just get uncovered every day. But please guys, please, unless you absolutely know 100% they are correct, don't use drawings. And I'm now going to go back to this book just once again, just to give you a perfect example of why you shouldn't use drawings. Look at the shape of those wing tanks. Yeah, look at the shape of them there. Okay, and then look at the shape of them there. Nah. So let's have a look at these spoilers. Now I'm going to pop a picture up now, and it shows you how thin these are. When you put these in, you can see that they're designed to be toy-like and stand up, so you can have them displayed up. We don't need. I'm just going to glue mine down. Now, basically, these tangs on the back are very, very thin. I'll put a picture up now. There you go, and you can see how thin they are. This is the only good picture I could find on the web, and it's actually an artist's impression. It's an artistic photograph taken in a scrapyard, and you can see there the wing is. I've reversed the photograph for copyright. And basically that you can see that wing is, that spoiler is very, very thin. So I need to look at how we're going to thin this out and stop it looking so toy-like. So I thought what I could do is glue it in and then fill it up with blister surface or a filler or something. But that will always form like a convex face, and I want it to be square. So what I'm going to do is sand the back of these out. But obviously because they're going to get them so thin, we're going to be breaking them off easily. So let's have a look at how we can sand them. Right, so I've got this glued to a piece of double-sided tape. So if we peel the back of the tape off, doesn't like, this is Duck brand, this tape, and it doesn't like separating. It's a nightmare. I had to edit there, I swore. I called it effing stuff. So anyway, so I'm going to put that down on the base there and just. That'll hold that down, and then what that'll do is when I'm sanding these little spoiler bits, it'll stop them all sort of bending and flexing. So I've got a very coarse sanding stick here. And what I want to do is sand the back of these and not come over the end. If I come over the end, I'm likely to catch one of those and snap them off. So I want to sort of restrict my movement. Let's get these bloody grip. I dropped one of these wings yesterday. I dropped this one, and luckily it fell on there and broke that, so I've had to glue it back in. If it had fallen on the engine, I'd have been well gutted. But they are quite cumbersome. So basically I'm going to restrict my movements. Oh dear, the modelling board's going to slide around. I want to make sure I don't come off the end, because then I will start to snap things. So the idea here is to sand these down to nothing, and basically just put some plastic card on the back. I think what I might do actually is come in with a knife. Let's change the angle. In fact, I'll come in with a scriber and scribe a line down here. Doesn't need to be perfect, but I just scribe a line down there roughly. Okay, and then move across a bit, swipe another one. And then I just want to come in with a knife and thin this plastic out. In fact, I should be able to use the rule to do that. So put the knife there. Whoops. And what I'm doing is thinning away this solid area of plastic, because obviously those little tangs, I'll call them, they're going to sand a lot easier than the solid area. So this modelling board's going to be a pain. And I'm doing this live on camera. Here's the other one here. I haven't tried it before, and I'm able to do this because I've got a spare kit. I can risk messing this up. Right. There we go. What I'm doing now, I'm holding the stick up so that it's not touching those tangs. I'm just as I say, I'm just trying to reduce the thickness of the plastic in the solid area. I think this would be a golden opportunity for a photo etch, guys. Basically cut that off and glue a piece of photo etch to the top of it, job done. Okay, we've got a bit of a step there now, but I'd like to see a bit more really, to be honest. As I say, you don't have to do this if you don't feel up to it, but it's just something I wanted to include that shows you a way of improving the basically awful toy-like spoilers, because they are so visible on the finished model. They're right in your face. They're one of the first things you're going to look at. Okay, so go back to our sanding without coming off the end now. And I think this end is a bit thicker than the other end. What we can do is place a rule next to it and feel it, and you can feel that it's pretty flush there, but it is raised up here. So what we'll do is come in and scrape some more material from here. And then do that again, put the rule up, you should feel it. Just trying to feel it to make sure it's sort of flush all the way down. So now we've thinned those out suitably. So we should be able to lift this tape. Without breaking our spoiler. I hadn't thought of this. This plastic crap out the way. So keep some upward pressure on it, slide the rule under. There we go. I should have detacked the tape a bit first. But there we go, we've thinned that out now. You can see those spoiler tangs now are very thin. So what we've got to try and do now is get the tape off without damaging the tangs. I think what I'm going to do is try soaking it in water to see what happens. I'll get on to do the other one, and then I'll come back and I'll let you know how I get on with this, having it soaked in water. I'm not sure if the water will make any effect. In fact, I may be able to put some IPA on it. That might work. So if I just put a drop of, let's get a pipette. That might help to dissolve the glue, but it won't hurt the plastic. Yeah, it's dissolving the glue, so that's a good sign. Making it a lot less sticky. So we just leave that to soak in a bit. making a gooey mess is what it's doing. There we go. There we are. So what we can do now is let that dry, let the IPA dry out, and then basically we'll be able to brush that swarf out of there. But you can see that now we've got a very thin section when you compare it to the original. You can see here we've got a very thin, well, it's about half the width. Come on camera, focus, it's about half the width. So what we can do now is glue some plastic card behind there, and then when we stick it in the wing they'll look a lot thinner, and if you want to we could put some Mr. Surfacer over there just to sort of reduce the thickness a bit. But yeah, I'm happy with that, so I'm going to do the other one the same, but I think this time I will de-tack my tape because it was a little bit sticky, that one, and I don't want that great big chunk on the end, do I, to attract all the gunge. I may as well just leave it on there. There we go, that can go down like that. Now we can try and get the backing off this cursed bloody stuff. There we go, that was easier. I'm just going to de-tack this. Okay, and then we can stick that down on there and do the same all over again. Now we've got our spoilers sanded down. You can see I use my calipers here, and you can see how thin they are. We're down to like 0.5, 0.55, 0.57, 0.56. So we got them really thin. When you look at how thick they were 1 millimeter. So we've half the thickness of them. They're still way thicker than scale, but we can't sand them to scale because they would be probably 5 or 6 thou thick. So I'm using millimeters, I keep talking. At the moment they are 20 thou thick, so I can't go too much thinner, I'll just lose them, other than completely remaking them, which I'm not going to do. So as I say, if you don't want to do this, if you don't feel up to it, then don't. Another way to do it would be to cut these tabs off, put some plastic card in here, which is like, this is, what's this? That's 1 millimeter deep. So if you put some plastic card in there, which was like 0.5 thick, then glue that on top and then sand away the top, you will end up thinning it out the same, but you'll have to rescribe the detail on there because they are actually individual flaps. And then you'll also be rescribing all around here and being careful not to hit your vortex generators and blah 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 blah. So now we've got these done, we've got them nice and thin. You can see we've got hairy edges on them, and even though we can come in with a brush. One other thing I want to talk about, sorry, before I carry on, digital calipers. Okay, people call these vernier calipers. They're not vernier calipers. They don't have a vernier scale. So they're called digital calipers. I have actually got some vernier calipers here if you're interested. These are vernier calipers. This is a vernier scale. Okay, so you're reading off a scale, a vernier scale, rather than having a dial or a digital output on there. So this is a pair of calipers, 6-inch calipers. And basically we zero them there, and Gary Murphy was asking if I knew about the 4 ways these can be used to measure. Now, I mean, most people say there are 3, but there are actually 4. So let me just find something here to measure. Here we go. Okay, let's take this clear block here. This is a block you hold down photo etch with when you're cutting, and it's covered in dust because I do lots of sanding. Okay, so I want to know the diameter of that pin. There we go, it's 10 millimeters. Okay, so that's your standard one there. I want to know the width of that. 27 millimeters. That's your standard one there. Now, I need something with an internal bore. If I want to know what size the internal bore is, so we looked at 1. There's 2. Okay, so that's 18 millimeter bore in there. Okay, so there's 2. So back to this one, I want to know how long that shaft is. Okay, so you can come along and there's 3. So the shaft is 20.5 millimeters long. Okay. Fourth, not a lot of people know this one. like that on the back. Okay, this is really good this way because you've got, when you do it this way, okay, you don't know if you like that, you don't know if you like this, so you could be like that, you could be like that. It's very difficult to judge if you've got it square. Whereas this one, you can put that down on there like that, so you're holding it square this way. You can rest that up against the side of there, so you're holding it square that way, and then push that down on there, and there you go, 20.3. That's the actual size of that. Okay, and also if you want to know the position of that, you can come along, push the side of this into there nice and square, and then slide along. Whoops, trying to film it and hold it is not easy. Okay, so that will tell you the distance from the side in there. So that's your 4. Okay, so you got 1, 2, 3 and 4. All right, hope that satisfies you, Gary, and if you know of a 5th one, let me know. Right, so before I got sidetracked, this fluff on here is basically plastic dust, and we can try and brush it away, but it's really stuck on there. So what you do then is come along with some extra thin, make sure the brush isn't too wet, and just brush it in between all those veins, and it will get rid of that plastic. It's basically very fine plastic hairs, if you like. You don't want to be flooding it because then you'll weaken your part, because it is quite thin, remember. There we go, and just go along like that. And it'll remove all the little bits of dust and fluff and imperfections. And I'm actually dipping the brush in and then wiping it up the side. A bit of plastic off of there. I hope you found that interesting about the Vortex generators. It's some would say rivet counting, some would say get a life, but it's kind of, you know, I mean, no one's saying, oh, this paddle line is in the wrong position, or you've got 8 of these marked out and there should only be 7. I mean, there are 7. It's not rivet counting in that way, but it's kind of, you know, it's an observation in a very prominent place. It's like these noses I do. You know, I did have someone comment, get a life, when I talked about my resin noses I make. You know, here's the B52G nose. You can see how fat it is there. There's my nose. Check your references and see which one looks more correct. You can see how much plastic is exposed there. And people say, I'll get a life and everything. It's not a case of getting a life. It's a case of having a B52 model that looks right. And to my eye, you know, none of the kits, other than this one, none of the kits have the correct nose profile, so I decided to make my own and make resin masters and enable people to buy them from me. But because I don't know what it is, guys, but if you're new to the hobby, you will find this. Most Asian manufacturers, okay, Tamiya included, although I don't have an example, but I bet they have done one. If they're going to make one mistake on a model aircraft, it's always the bloody nose. It's like you look around in the aftermarket, just go into Hannons and put in resin nose, and you'll find that there's a resin nose out there for pretty much every bloody aircraft on the market. It's crazy. You know, Revell, they're 1/32 scale Phantoms. The nose on them is an absolute joke. I didn't buy a resin nose. I used a drop tank or a centerline fuel tank that was in the kit. I used that and recontoured the nose myself. If you want to see that, I did it. If you're in Flory models, they go back to the group builds or the SIG build, whatever it was, the Toons, the Phantoms, back many years ago, probably a God, maybe 2010, 2011, and I did a Tamiya 1/32 scale f4e, and I did a Revell 1/32 scale f4g. Can't remember now. It's a colourful one anyway, and you'll see how I remade the nose using a drop tank. It was actually in the kit. But the f4e, that's worth a look if you haven't. The f4e can also be seen over on large scale planes. They did a group build the same sort of time, and I put it up on that one as well, and that was called the Tombs or something. It was a Phantom group build, but I added engine detail and everything, because there are 2 ports that open to relieve pressure from the engine bays, and when you look up inside underneath the Phantom you can see the bottom of the engines, and I actually made fictitious engines. So absolutely crazy, but it's got every bit of aftermarket you can buy pretty much on that model, and yeah, so go and take a look at those. Anyway, and for those of you that say I don't finish anything, you'll see 2 models finished there. So right, that's that done. What we've got to do now, we're going to put some plastic card in behind there to give it that flush look. If I think of it, I'll put this photo up again now, you can see what I mean. It sort of comes down and it's just very thin fingers laying on a sheet of metal. So I'll get that up now, we'll get that plastic card out and we'll go from there. So I've got a piece of plastic card here, and this is 0.3 millimeters thick. So what's that? That's like 12 or 15 thou, whatever. So basically it's probably 10 thou actually, it's probably 0.25. So I'm basically just going to glue this on here, let it set for a few minutes and then trim it off. So just let that tack down, and I do want to make sure that this is glued down pretty well, because I don't want these tangs to be hanging around in the air. So just put a couple of drops in here. And I'm going to come in from behind, basically run some down here. You can see it running in. Okay, you can see the glue going in there. Just put a drop in there. There we are. So that's that. So we're going to let that dry. It's not quite straight, but we're not worried about that. You're not going to see any of it. Let that dry for a couple of minutes. What I'll do is glue the other one on here. So we'll hold that like that. In fact, I may as well just go in and glue this from this side. There we are. There we go. So we can leave that like that now just to dry off, and then we're going to cut it out and we'll put them in the wings. Cut one out and realised I don't have the camera on, so luckily we've got the other one here to do. All I'm going to do, place a steel rule over the edge, okay, and make sure the tangs aren't exposed. If we do get a little bit too much plastic card remaining, then we can just simply sand it down, but there we go. We should be able to just snap that off. Now that rule moved. I felt it move and I can see the cut line there. So I'm going to have to redo this. Normally when the rule moves, that's a sign of a blunt blade. What you don't want to do is feel yourself cutting those tangs. So it should break off now. Yeah, it's a bit of a mess, that one, but that's a good thing in a way, because that means I can show you what you're doing now. I'm going to sand. I'm going to come in on an angle from the back so that we sand the plastic card and not the tangs, because when you actually look at the wing, it's going in, there's a bit of an angle on there, so it's kind of cut back. Okay, so there we go. And then on the ends, what we've got to do is come along and just pop them off like so, and then we can dry fit it, see how it looks. There we go. And I think you can agree, get that bit of plastic there, I think we can agree that that looks a lot better than it did before, just having those thinner slats. Now it's still inaccurate because, as I say, looking at that photo, they're actually lead on the wing surface, so it looks like kind of the recess for these is further back and they should be just sat on the surface. But years ago, Meteor Productions, I believe, made replacement spoilers for this model. I haven't seen any. If I could get my hands on some, I would, because I would love a set. And I would modify them and then make my own. But basically, yeah, there we go. So that's going to look a hell of a lot better than just having the plastic parts as they were. And what we can do now is glue that in, and then we'll use Mr. Surfacer around here, just like we did on these pylons. But this time, we'll actually use the Mr. Surfacer and the thinners, and leave we want to see a join because it's a separate part, but we don't want a great big gap like that in there. So what I'm going to do is get that out of there. Now there's a, let's see if this is still working, if it's not clogged up. There we go. Put a blob of that glue in there along like that. And hopefully there we go, that will go in and not ooze out. So that will hold that down. So what we can do then is just put it over there. We can put some pegs on it. There we go, another one on that end because it wants to lift up on that end. And there we are. So that's how to deal with your spoilers if you're going to have them closed. If you want them open, then obviously this was just a complete waste of time for you. And so we've got both our spoilers fitted now. I clamped them in, as you saw, let the glue dry, and I've gone round with a really good thick plaster, Mr. Surfacer, in these gaps, and you can see there where it's sinking in. When that happens, leave it, let it dry, and then you can put more on the top. It's no good just keep piling it in, because what's happening, that is actually capillarying underneath, and it's basically just going to keep going until it, you know, when it dries it'll form a shell, and then you can put some more on top. And then we'll just go around with the cotton bud again, the same as we did with these engine pylons. I've also put some more around here, I put some more in there, just basically go around looking for pinholes, looking for little divots and stuff. And I may need to come in here with some skinny sticks and start sanding in there, because what we're getting now is where the recess in the wing is so much bigger than the pylon. We've got this great big gap, so every time you go in with your cotton bud, you're actually leaving a divot there, which is the whole idea of doing it. It's removing material and leaving a smooth surface. So I may need to come in there with some skinny sanders and get in there and just sand them so the wing remains flush up to the pylon, then goes up. Looking at some close-up photos, it is actually not that good in that area. Let me just see if I can grab one here without turning the camera off. This is, I know this is an H and H, this is a H. We can see there was a picture here close up of one of the engine pylons on top of the wing, and you'll see that it's not, here we go, it's not a perfectly neat and tidy kind of area. It's you know, it's a little rivety and almost filler like, if you like. Another one here. It's you know, they're not absolutely perfect. Another one there you can see. Okay, so you know, you don't need to go for perfection. They're not perfect on the real thing. But then again, you know, these pictures here, I'm not sure when this book was made. 2018, no, 2008. 2008, so that's 12 years ago. So these are 60 years old. They were 48 years old then. So it's crazy, isn't it? It's crazy. If these B-52s were cars, they'd be called classic cars, and they'd be going to specialist shows at the weekends and in museums and stuff. It's bloody crazy. You know, when you think, you know, 60 years old, a B-52 bomber, 60 years old, still flying, and going to be staying in service for another 20, 30 years, whatever. You know, they're only 15 years newer than a bloody B-29, for God's sake. You know, think of it that way. They're only 15, they're only about 20 years newer than a bloody P-51. You know, absolutely crazy. You think how far we've come from a P-51 to an F-22 or an F-35. Now, you know, we've still got these. These were developed for at the end of the war. It's just absolutely crazy. And that just shows what a fantastic airframe, what a fantastic design, what a fantastic aircraft it is. I was surprised to find, I was looking up, they cost $11,000 an hour to fly in maintenance costs alone. Wow. Anyway, because I'm going to have to leave this for probably 36, 48 hours to go hard, because there is so much in there. I've really plastered it in. I'm going to call this a day for part 16, is this? Part 16, yeah. Call it a day for this, and then we'll come back in part 17 and finish all this off, get all these pylons sanded and finished, and we will finally get some paint on. So I also need to look at fitting these weapons pylons. As you can imagine, they are a bloody awful fit. Look at it. Look at the gaps down there. So we're going to have to look at some way of doing something with this to make them fit better, but have them removable, because I don't want to have them in the way and have to get in there sanding the fuselage. So I don't want to glue these in now. I want to glue these in at the end. So there we go. So I think what I might have to do is put these in, put some plastic card down the sides, and then you know, just force it in there, and then just put some Mr. Surfacer in there, push this in, let it dry, and then pull it out. Perhaps put a bit of grease on, a bit of Vaseline or something, so it doesn't stick. But we'll definitely have to do something with that, and I don't know what really, but the gaps there are huge. So of course the other thing you could do is cut these open and widen this out. I guess that's another option, but yeah, not good. Cross that bridge when we come to it. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you all soon for part 17. Bye for now.